In every sport, there are always several key players that set the foundation for the future. And when you think about baseball, you think of guys like Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth. In football, you might think of a guy like Johnny Unitas. In the sport of triathlon, three names come to mind: Dave Scott, Scott Tinley, and Scott Molina. Catch 47 sports director Eric Keaton met with these legends of the sport, or as triathletes call them, the Big Three.
It's the 80s, the place, Hawaii, the sport, triathlon, a grueling 140-mile-plus journey testing physical and mental endurance.
3, 2, 1, white top is in the water.
The winner is christened Ironman champion, and it's this decade that Dave Scott, Scott Tinley, and Scott Molina set the standard for the sport and are named the Big Three.
When we first started, we didn't really know what we were doing. I had a background in physiology, and I thought I knew something, but I didn't really know anything. I just went out there and trained hard, and Scott started training harder, and I said, okay, I got to do more, and you know, we sort of fumbled through it during the early years.
I just happened to ride my bike by the one event that probably existed anywhere in the world at the time on the day it was going on in like 1974, which was real close to my house in San Diego, near Mission Bay. And I just saw these guys swimming in the bay, and then they got on their bikes, and they rode around a little bit, and they got on, and then they ran, and they got back in the water.
I still compete a lot. Fortunately, my ailments are not debilitating most of the time, and so I can do a lot of events, and I like competing. I like being out there and, you know, just smashing myself just for the hell of it, just to work out. So as far as that side of it, you know, I just like to get out there and share the experience with people.
Good luck, everybody.
3 decades later, and the trio is still sharing their experiences, most recently during a sprint triathlon at Fort DeSoto.
You know, the Larry Bird, the Magic Johnson, the Michael Jordan of the sport of triathlon. I mean, you know, they were all fast. Molina was a fast sprinter. Tinley was just a good PR long distance guy. And then, you know, Dave Scott, 6 Ironman, speaks for itself.
Well, it's fun racing against people who I've grown up with, watching them race in Hawaii. And so it's interesting to see how your time compares to their time. Since when you see them in the magazines and that, you see their time and you always wonder how would I compare to that in that situation.
They're the legends of the sport. They're the heroes. They're maybe collectively, they're like the Lance Armstrong. As Lance is to cycling, they are to triathlon. And particularly Dave Scott, he won Ironman 6 times, and he won it in 1980, the 3rd time they had it. He's really the man, but they're all great guys, and they're all very fast, and they're still fast.
And they are fast, like the sport they helped pioneer.
Well, I thought originally it would just be a California-based sport. You know, we had a nice climate. It seemed to pick up in California. I did a race actually in '76 in San Francisco. That was my first triathlon, and I thought, you know, this is really fun. I hope I can do this again next year. And you know, it wasn't until 80 Ironman that I said, well, maybe I could, you know, do this on a more full-time basis. But I kept thinking it was going to be an event just for the States. You know, I had no idea that I was going to go in Malaysia and Brazil and really around the world, and you know, the big surprise was just seeing the number of international governing bodies that all of a sudden had a bona fide group that, you know, competed at a top level, and it seemed to spring really fast in the 80s.
Born in California, Molina now resides in New Zealand, a country down under that lives and breathes triathlon.
Well, New Zealand was pretty fortunate. It's a small place, and so they're a sports-mad sort of society, and they had some international success quite early on, some very successful triathletes, and so the idea that New Zealanders could be good at triathlon was easily accepted. You know, it wasn't hard to buy in because they were winning a lot of races, and they've had national series. They have, every school in New Zealand has a triathlon. Every kid in the country has probably done a triathlon or seen it at their school, and so it's percentage-wise, you know, it's very popular.
Tampa Bay is a thriving multi-sport community. Dave Scott points to the St. Anthony's race in April, now 2 decades old, and the newly 70.3 series next year in Clearwater.
Well, it's a natural stepping stone. The half Ironman race, 70.3, is the next step for Ironman. The Ironman races are so crowded right now, and to get into the races worldwide, you have to generally register on that day that they open it and it's closed. It fills up 1,500 or 2,000 people. So, I think for most people that are stepping up from the sprint distance, which we're doing, and Olympic and half, it's a logical progression and it's doable. A lot of people jump into Ironman, and I don't think they're really prepared to do it. They say, "Oh, I'm going to do an Ironman," and they can prepare 6 or 9 months, but it's a struggle. You have people that are doing it in 14, 15, 16, 17 hours, and I'm talking about, younger people. I mean, the older folks, it's admirable, but, it's a long work day out there.
Let's go race. Have some fun. Be safe.
For the Big Three, racing is work, and even though the DeSoto destination is a 15-mile sprint and not a 140-mile all-day journey, it fuels the need to compete, just like yesteryear.
There weren't that many times that the three of us, and then if you would add Mark Allen, which really should be a part of this whole triumvirate, that we actually raced against each other on a regular basis. It was Scott and I a lot. I think in some of the smaller USTS Olympic distance or smaller regional events in the 80s, and then it was Dave and I for a while in Hawaii, and then it was Mark and Dave for years, and then it was Mike Pig and any one of us for a while. So there was always these duels, but there weren't that many times where there was like the 3 or 4 of us just like beating heads.
But at that time, Scott, was it a rivalry with you and Pig, where you weren't adversaries like you'd see on the football field with 2 teams going against each other? It was basically friendly competition. Would you describe it as that, or maybe something different when you're out there competing?
I would say friendly competition is a good description, but that's because of the type of people we are and the nature of the sport. I don't think that diminished our desire to win.
And when it's time to start, the Big Three still know how to race to the podium.
3. Save money is on Molina. 2.
Looks a little soft, doesn't it?
1.
Let's go race. Have some fun.
Hurry. Hurry.
You're kidding me. Oh. This way?
Old school. Tight, no lace locks.
This way? That way. You go. Oh, my shirt. Go! Oh, go. Which way? That way. Straight ahead.
It's just such a rookie thing.
Winning today's Coca-Cola Triathlon Classic, Dave Scott.
Ooh, that hurt.
Incredible. Absolutely 100% incredible for Dave Scott to win today.
It's amazing that this sport, you could do it for forever. It's not a sport that you just, you get weaker as you get older. Actually, the older you are, the age of 44 to 49-year-old age group is one of the toughest.
And they're 45 to 50, and they're contending to win the race today. Guys that normally win the race, we're back.
I wasn't too far behind him. I was actually pretty close to the guys today, which was surprising because I didn't think I was in as good a shape as I have been the rest of the summer after the couple weeks I've been off. But I was pretty close.
And after an hour's work and 30 years of paddling, pedaling, and painful running, the Big Three still amaze each other.
But how about Dave, huh? This guy, the guys are amazing. Even I'm impressed with Dave.
I was surprised that Dave went so fast, to tell you the truth, because we both have a lot of ailments, and our training is hit and miss at best. And his running over the last few years is, he just can't run. But he can ride, and he showed that today. He rode extremely well. For a 50-year-old guy, the guy's top end is fantastic.
Comrades here are kind of still amazed.
Well, I don't know, maybe out of fear. When a gun goes off, Eric, it's something that you never forget. That little high level of discomfort. Here you go again. Doesn't matter if it's an Ironman 20 years ago or a sprint distance race. Once you're out in the water, you say, okay, go, do it. And it's funny, we were talking about it last night. We said, okay, here we go, another race, and getting up this morning at 4:30. And I said, God, what are we doing? I'm 51. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. And But you know, it's fun. We would certainly like to go to other races together. You know, if race directors are willing, there's 3 old guys, come on.
Oh, that's great. What a wonderful story. A couple things on it. Number one, how did you do?
I finished 15 minutes behind them.
Okay.
They are fast, let me tell you. And you know what? I'm not embarrassed because they have a lot more training time, and it was a pleasure to watch them from the backside. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I do, and I want to point out that this is one of those events, Eric, where really you go into it and it's the individual time. I mean, everybody thinks you race against the elites, but really it's improving yourself and improving your own time.
Exactly. You're really racing yourself out there and racing the clock, and that's what you normally try to do. I mean, you have age groups and you compete against each other and you try to compete against your friends and everything, but really the most enjoyable part is crossing that finish line, finishing, looking up the clock and saying, hey, another mark in the old trophy case.
All right, you haven't done the full Ironman yet.
No, but I look forward to next year, 2006, when the 70.3, that's the half Ironman World Championships, come to Clearwater. We'll either be there competing or we'll be there right here for Bay Sports with Dick Crippen. We'll be there, one of the two, so we're going to be there in Clearwater.
He'll be right here with Bay Sports.
We'll probably be beside each other watching.
Dave Scott's won this thing 6 times?
6 times. But believe it or not, the 2 that he points out that he's most proud of was 1994. He finished 2nd overall, 40 years of age. 2 years later, he finished in the top 6 at age 42. He didn't win those races, but you just have to look. He's there competing with guys in their younger 30s, and he's finishing in the top 10. It's just an amazing story. It's an amazing sport and a lot of endurance, whether you're on the sprint level or you're all the way up in Hawaii or one of the other number of Ironman triathlons throughout the world.
Well, I know one thing that was always surprising to people is the fact that they all connect it with Hawaii, but in fact it's owned right here in Tarpon Springs, Florida, the whole event.
Tarpon Springs, back in 1991, I believe they gained the whole rights, and now it's just blossomed. It's just amazing how one little event in Hawaii now is throughout the world in probably at least 15 to 20 countries. There's so many I can't count. There's 5 right here in the United States, and in November, Panama City will have theirs 2 weeks after the Hawaii Championships.
When is it actually coming in now? You talk about the world on the half triathlon?
The half Ironman, that will be in November of next year, 2006. And if you listen to Dave Scott, he said it's just a natural stepping stone. You've had the Ironman, the full 112-mile bike, the 2.4-mile swim, the marathon. You've had that for a number of years, but on the half Ironman level, you've never had a world championship. And finally, the organization up in Tarpon Springs has put it all together, and that will happen in Clearwater right here. They wanted another tropical destination, and so it's about time. That new bridge is ready, and by November next year, all the world half Iron triathletes will be here competing for that trophy.
Well, and we might say a runner is the guy who's behind the ownership of that, and that's Dr. Gills, who runs to work every day. So he's definitely devoted. Well, I appreciate that report, and I think a lot of folks will be interested in it. Maybe they can start training.